Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Have we got two great guests for you to discuss some of the big stories impacting our country and the world. In just a little bit, I'll be joined by Buck Sexton. We've got a deep dive into a story many are whispering about, the real and obvious mental decline of President Joe Biden. We've put something together for you on that. But we begin with one of my favorites on what is happening in our society and the problems plaguing it. And there's a lot that could go under that banner. Joining me now, Dennis Prager, host of the Dennis Prager Show and co-founder of PragerU. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. I've got big news from Bonner Wines. This is only for true adventure seekers who are looking for more in their wine drinking experience than your grocery store big box wines. The Bonner Private Wine Partnership is releasing a wine so rare it sells out practically every time it's been available. They invite you to come on an extraordinary journey to remote vineyards where a never-before imported gem has wine enthusiasts everywhere raving. At altitudes of up to 9,000 feet, grapes defy nature's harshest challenges, thriving in poor soil, enduring extreme UV rays, and facing thin atmosphere and volatile temperature swings. The result? This one-of-a-kind extreme altitude Malbec. I've arranged special access for you. Visit bonnerprivatewines.com/MK and become a member of Bonner Private Wine Partnership. But act fast, you don't want to miss your chance. Visit bonnerprivatewines.com/MK now for wine at 50% off plus free shipping. Bonner, BONNER, privatewines.com/MK today to get your wine delivered directly to your doorstep. Dennis, welcome back to the show.
Always good. Thank you.
So good to see you. All right, so I'm going to start a little bit out of left field, but nobody's going to be talking about it. Marilyn Mosby, the former Baltimore prosecutor who was after those 6 cops for what she said was the murder of Freddie Gray back in, 15, is going to prison. She's going to prison herself. And this is part of a pattern that we're seeing with either soft on crime DAs funded by George Soros who don't want to prosecute crime, but you really just get elevated because they're going to advance his lawless agenda. And they all tend to check certain identity boxes. And others like members of the squad who are proving to have disgraced themselves. So Marilyn Mosby, just as a refresher, when the country was burning, it was Ferguson and then Freddie Gray in Baltimore, and they had riots and the cops were getting bottles thrown at them and beaten up without the proper gear. She went out there, and a prosecutor has an ethical obligation not to inflame the mob, not to. And this is what she said back in the day. Watch.
To the youth of this city, I will seek justice on your behalf. This is a moment. This is your moment. And as young people, our time is now.
Okay. This is our moment. This is your moment. Okay. So after those cops, they were either hung juries or they got acquitted. She would not let up on them. She just kept coming. Well, long story short, Dennis, turns out she did a legal sleight of hand on some COVID mortgage funds. And she has now been convicted of 1 count of mortgage fraud for lying on financial documents. She tried to game the system to get a mortgage, and she had already been convicted on 2 counts of perjury in a separate criminal trial that took place in November. She's not yet been sentenced, but she stood there in court sobbing as she was convicted by this jury. She now technically faces decades in prison. She could serve anywhere up to 40 years in prison. That's highly unlikely, but this person's likely going to jail. We had a report last week that Cori Bush of the Squad is under investigation for funny business with respect to her husband, allegedly paying him, this is what we think, more than was allowed as her so-called security guard. Fannie Willis down in Georgia is now under ethical review by at least 3 different bodies, by my count, for allegedly paying her lover more than the other co-prosecutors and being dishonest about it. Okay, we could keep going. But it seems to me, Dennis, there's somewhat of a reckoning going on right now with some of these people being put in these positions who had no business being there. And the fact that they're going down based on ethical violations seems particularly apt, because while in these positions of power, it doesn't seem to me that ethics has been at the top of their concerns when they've used the power as a U.S. Congresswoman, as a DA in Georgia, as a DA in Maryland. I could keep going in the way that the founders envisioned.
Justice is always worth the price paid for its pursuit. You see, in spite of the fact that the verdicts didn't go in our favor, there have been many gains throughout this journey to ensure that what happened to Freddie Gray never happens to another person. Never again should an officer ignore or neglect a prisoner's request for medical attention. Never again should an officer exhibit a blatant or reckless disregard for human life.
That's my wind up. What do you make of it?
So I have a darker view of this than you do in one way and a lighter view in another. The issue to me is the personal integrity of public leaders has never been a preoccupation of mine. When you have the power of a public official, how you use that power is infinitely more of concern to me than how you lead your own personal ethical life. I remember in the 1990s, I wrote a column, Adultery and Politicians. And I said, I'm against adultery. Personally, I'm a religious man, but I don't really give a damn if a politician has been faithful to his wife. It's between him and his wife, and between him and his family, and between him and his God. All I care is how he affects the 300 million Americans. At the time I wrote it was more like 250 million Americans, and the world. That's why I have no interest in the statements made about Donald Trump and his alleged character defects. All I know is that for 4 years, the United States prospered on earth and domestically during his governance. Jimmy Carter was a born-again Christian, was faithful to his wife, and he was a horrible president, and he damaged the world, and he made up the lie that Israel is an apartheid state. So I just have to tell you, the personal ethical shortcomings, or for that matter, even excellences of public officials is of secondary interest to me.
Is that the happy part or the sad part?
Good one. That was very astute of you. Both, because listen, my field of study was Soviet history. I studied Russian. I was the Russian Institute at Columbia. So I've studied the left all of my life. Lenin was apparently quite honest, to the best of my recollection. And he was a butcher. He was the man who made Stalin possible. Life is complex. And again, if you have power, I care how you wield your power. Much more than I care about how you lead your life. Whenever I go to Minnesota, which is frequent, I note that Minnesota, there's a saying in Minnesota called Minnesota nice, which is actually accurate. There are so many nice people in Minnesota. The damage that Minnesotans do with the horrible human beings they elect proves how often nice people do terrible things. So it's one of the sad realizations of life.
So I don't agree with your take on these prosecutors and the troubles that they're getting in, because I don't see these as this isn't like just an affair. Fani Willis, very few people are coming after her because she allegedly committed adultery with this guy. That's not the thing. The thing is, many of us believe she's pursuing an unethical prosecution, weaponizing the law to stop a presidential candidate from winning a presidential race. Correct. And this is unethical. And so to me, it's just evidence of a pattern when you then find out, she's also allegedly stooping the guy and paying him more than she's paying the other guys. And then he's flying her to Napa and then down to Jamaica and buying her, cruise tickets. All of it fits a pattern, and she falls below the ethical standards required of DAs, which is to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Same with this Marilyn Mosby. I lived it. I watched her go out and fan the flame. She didn't give two damns what happened to the cops in Baltimore as they were under fire from those mobs down there who had been fed lies about what happened to Freddie Gray. She never let up on those cops, even after juries acquitted them and said that they're not to blame for this. And now we find out she's not an ethical person. Two different juries have said so. Multiple felony convictions now. She's the one who's going to wind up in jail. Meanwhile, where do the cops go to get their reputations back? We're seeing some just desserts meted out, and I'm ready to applaud the karma of it all.
Oh, I applaud the karma. I'm with you on that. All I'm saying is that if these people, if leftists were personally honorable, the damage they have done to society is the same. And therefore, that's what preoccupies me about the left. Everything they touch, they ruin. Whether they are personally honorable or not is not high on my interest level. That's all I'm saying. I want to crush. There is a race in this country. If the left wins, America dies. If America wins, the left dies. That's to me the bottom line, and frankly, the only line.
Is it still winnable?
Yeah, it is still winnable, believe it or not. If they allow Trump to win, if there is no new disease, if there is no cyber attack, if they don't make up a new rule about extending election day 4 months instead of 4 weeks. I mean, the attempt to undo honorable elections is very powerful on the left. But if they enable a Republican to win, and by the way, they preoccupy themselves with Trump, but they hated DeSantis. And if DeSantis were nominated, they would have spoken about him as a fascist and dictator, as they already do about him as governor of Florida. So this preoccupation with Trump is phony. They hate any conservative, and they have a right to, because we are the only thing stopping them from ruining the country.
What happens if Trump loses? It's a real question. I mean, what actually will happen if Joe Biden, not Michelle Obama swooping in, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win another term?
Well, again, it's to me, once again, it is irrelevant what Democrat it is. Let's say it's Adam Schiff. Is Adam Schiff, who, by the way, I think is literally a pathological liar. I don't think I've ever called a public official in 40 years of broadcasting a pathological liar. That man does not know the difference between truth and a lie, which is very frightening. People who know they're lying, there is hope for them. People who don't, there's no hope for them. Adam Schiff is, I believe, a bad human being. But it doesn't matter. Name me a Democrat, a prominent Democrat, who would not allow the left to ruin the country, who would not be in favor of having medical schools and the entire psychological and psychiatric apparatuses ruin children's lives if they say they're 10. You know what? Parents just lost their, I think, 10-year-old daughter who said she was a boy, or boy said she was a girl. I don't remember which it is. They literally took the child away from the parents in Montana. Yeah. That's Montana.
We had the parents on the show.
Oh, well, bless you. Good. Well, so tell me a Democrat who is opposed to that. Name me one prominent senator or representative or member of the cabinet who. So that's why it is irrelevant to me whether it's Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. It is of no consequence. If they win, the American future is truly in doubt for the first time since the Civil War.
I mean, I'll give you one sign of hope since we're exchanging glimmers. There were those. It was a handful of lawmakers in New Hampshire that crossed party lines. The Democrats, some Republicans went the other way, but the Republicans made up the majority of those voting in favor of this bill. And the difference was made by the Dems who crossed the aisle to vote with them to ban the medicalization of kids claiming that they're gender confused, to ban these surgical procedures on them.
If you want a bright possibility, I'll tell you what I do, which I recommend to everybody on our side. I read the New York Times. It's an act of martyrdom on my part on behalf of my listeners and readers.
Martyrdom.
Anyway, I read it every day, and what make sure to read are comments, because the only people who can comment on a New York Times piece are New York Times subscribers. That's how I really know how liberals and the left, they're not the same, how liberals and the left think. So they had, to my great surprise and pleasure, they had a gigantic article about detransitioning young people who regret that, like this girl who had her breasts removed when she was 17 or 18 years of age by some despicable surgeons and psychologists and psychiatrists and children's hospitals. That's another story. I looked at the comments. There were, I think, 3,000 comments. I always check off reader's pick. So I want to know what are the most popular comments on a given article. I couldn't even find one that differed with the article. Every single popular comment in the New York Times among its readers was, "This is disgusting what is happening to kids." If there is an Achilles heel for the left, it may in fact be the mutilation of children in the name of the lie that you can become a member of the other sex. That may have been the line, as you point out in New Hampshire, a bridge too far.
That's the thing, is I just think it is definitely bringing, this is an issue, the gender thing, bringing left and right together. And it starts there with the medicalization of children who probably in most cases have no gender dysphoria, no gender confusion whatsoever. They're just confused about life, and they're depressed, or they're on the autism spectrum, and they're not really gender confused. But beyond that, men and women's sports there's a story every day about that people can see with their eyes, the fundamental unfairness of it. Men and women's spaces, coming into our locker rooms, our bathrooms, the guy up in Canada, completely naked and intact male with 12-year-olds in the locker room. It's not just Canada. Happened in Michigan in a locker room there with schools. A girl was, of course, sexually assaulted down in Virginia by a guy in a skirt. There's plenty of cases that we could document. But I do think that's separate and apart from the issue of whether you believe a man can become a woman. I don't. But it's separate and apart from that issue. These fundamental issues of fairness tend to be ones that we're starting to meet each other on. I can't think of another area in which we're doing that, Dennis.
That's right.
Some of the other gospel on the left is collapsing because it's collapsing, but not because we're meeting each other.
And not only that, not one of those commenters in the New York Times is going to stop voting Democrat because of this.
Yep.
See, I say over and over, the American tragedy is the liberal. The left vote their values, conservatives vote their values, liberals do not. Liberals vote left wing when their values are so much more similar to conservatives. And if liberals voted their values, there would be no possibility of Democrats winning elections. That's the tragedy of America. Liberals do not vote according to liberal values.
You're right. We're seeing that more and more.
Do they really support two national anthems at the Super Bowl? Why isn't that as dispositive an issue as the mutilation of children? We have two national anthems for which we stand at a Super Bowl. Since when? What is the moral defense of that?
Yeah, no, that's been happening, of course, since George Floyd, Lift Every Voice and Sing, the so-called Black national anthem gets played right after the real national anthem. And it's like the song is about national unity and e pluribus unum and nothing else. Like the song says it all. There's no need for an addendum, right? Like that's the very nature of it.
Well, we're one nation. Again, I have coined the term many years ago called American Trinity. Christianity has a Trinity, so does America. And it's on every coin. I didn't make it up. I just made up the term. E pluribus unum, in God we trust, liberty. And the left is opposed to all three. They have no interest in God we trust. They want a purely secular education system, secular society, not just secular government. We're all for secular government, but they want the society to be essentially godless and Bibeless. E pluribus unum, they're for black dorms, black graduations, blacks lining up in different lines in elementary schools, and they are for a black national anthem at the Super Bowl. And liberty, there is no example in the history of the left, from Vladimir Lenin to Bernie Sanders, of having the left allow dissent. That liberty is the opposite. Look, the French Revolution was the leftist revolution, and the American Revolution was the conservative revolution. And the French Revolution immediately slaughtered tens of thousands of Catholic priests. It was one of the first things that it did. And of course, it ended liberty. That's the paradigm of the left. The paradigm of the right is the American Revolution.
I think you may have called attention to this. I saw it on X the other day, and I lived it myself when I lived in Chicago on September 11th. You know, the outpouring of patriotism when it was not just okay to be unabashedly pro-America. It was a staple. It was still a staple. It was the expected norm. And these freaks who hate the country were just that, freaks. But it was Sammy Sosa after September 11th.
I brought that out,
Yeah, I saw you remarking on it online. It's September 27th, 2001, Chicago Cubs versus Houston Astros. He hit the home run, and as he's rounding first, someone gave him a little American flag. Let's look at it.
Yeah, I got the chills. I have the chills. Yeah.
He held it as he ran the bases. Everyone on their feet. I have the chills right now.
It's a black American. It's Dominican, but black American. Yep.
It just seems like all the rage is the other way now.
You showed that to a kid today, they might think it was a colorized video from the 1940s.
Yeah. I got, that just made me sad, you know, not because of September 11th and that particular clip, but just how far we've fallen. You know, it's only been about 20 years, and how far I don't know. I mean, I know the leftist university professors have gotten us here, and the leftist takeover of media, you know, the iPhone. I feel like I have to mention, you know, just the distance from one another. Ironically, given what it actually does as a function, I do worry that in 20 years we won't be back to the Sammy Sosas of the world, even if we have a Trump presidency.
I worry. That's right. All I know is, though, I get this at every speech. Dennis, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Yeah.
And my most honest answer is the one I give. I have no interest in optimism or pessimism. The optimist doesn't fight and the pessimist doesn't fight, because they both have reasons not to fight. The optimist thinks things will turn out well. Why fight? The pessimist is sure things will turn out lousy. Why fight? I don't care if people are optimistic or pessimistic. I only care if they fight. And I owe it to every guy buried at Normandy Beach to fight. They fought Nazi submachine guns. I'm not fighting submachine guns. I'm just fighting hate that PragerU and I get all the time on virtually every day. I open up my Google alerts.
Oh boy!
If I were a drinking man, I would always drink a little prior, but I have no interest. My vice is cigars, so I think I have a cigar, and I read by the Google alerts. And Prager and PragerU, they're both fascists. It's unbelievable. You know how often I'm called an anti-Semite? I've written the most widely read introduction to Judaism in the English language. I have a Bible commentary out there on the Torah, and they call me an anti-Semite because they can't imagine, if you're conservative, you must be neo-Nazi. This is the simple mind of the left-wing human being.
Well, while you're reading those comments, I hope you keep in the back of your head, I know you think about all the people you've helped, but just keep in mind, yours truly is one of them. I'm a huge fan of PragerU and of Dennis Prager himself. And listening to you talk about these core issues, it really is life-changing. If you spend a lot of time over on PragerU, your eyes will open. So keep that in mind. Speaking of fighters and these issues starting to turn, the kid who was wrongly called a racist by Deadspin, the 9-year-old Kansas City Chiefs fan. Remember, he had half the face was in black and half the face was in red. and he had the Native American headdress on. And the Deadspin writer just completely excoriated this kid, called him a racist, said he, quote, hates Black people and the Native Americans at the same time. Look at this. This is so disgusting what this writer did. And it was a lie. It was a lie. He didn't show the audience that the kid actually had half Black, half red, which is a Chiefs thing, Kansas City Chiefs. And he publicly humiliated this 9-year-old totally unnecessarily and unfairly. And finally, Dennis, they've sued. God bless the parents of this boy. They have filed a lawsuit against, the parents of this boy have filed a lawsuit against Deadspin and its parent company for maliciously and wantonly attacking their minor child. Quote, by selectively capturing from the CBS broadcast an image of our child showing only one side of his face with black paint on it, an effort that took laser-focused precision to accomplish given how quickly the boy appeared on screen, Phillips and Deadspin deliberately omitted half of his face with red paint on it. He did not wear a costume headdress because he was, quote, taught hate at home, which was the claim. He wore it because he loves the Kansas City Chiefs football team and because he loves his Native American heritage. And by the way, they go on to say, after this lie was told intentionally to hurt this kid, they received death threats. Their child received death threats, threatening to kill him with a wood chipper. On it went. And I think 3 years ago, this family would not have filed the lawsuit. They would have been too afraid. And look at them now.
Oh, yeah. It's driving the left nuts. They own everything, and we're not dead. They don't understand it. And I actually somewhat feel for them. They own the universities, the high schools, and elementary schools. They own half of the religions, the non-Orthodox Jews, the non-evangelical Protestants, the non-traditional Catholics. They own the whole medical industry. Medical schools have become so woke that I actually fear for the competence of doctors in the next generation. They own United Airlines, which has announced that it's reserving half of its pilot spots for women and Blacks, which is very reassuring for flyers like myself who live on airplanes. They own it all, but we're alive and we're fighting. And it does. I actually think they lose more sleep at night than we do. It's an odd thing for me to say, but I do believe that when they call this kid a racist and so on, when they call the Washington Redskins, do you know? I mean, that kid is simply a prototype of the bigger issue. Do you know that the Washington Post commission, the Washington Post was in the vanguard of demanding that the Washington Redskins change their name because it was anti-Native American, anti-American Indian. And they commissioned this very elaborate poll of American Indians, of Native Americans. Overwhelmingly, they said, and this was reported in the Washington Post, by the way, to its credit, one of the rare times I could say that about the Washington Post. And they reported the overwhelming majority of American Indians didn't give a damn about the name Redskins.
Mm-hmm. Right. Of course, it's all Upper West Side woke liberals.
Yes. And I'll tell you where it emanates from. This is really important. Overwhelmingly, people on the left are empty. They're devoid of love of country. They're devoid of religion. So two of the biggest things that gave people meaning, God and country, give them no meaning. So they have to search for meaning. So they create things to fight, like the 9-year-old, like the Washington Redskins, like the Cleveland Indians, like Israeli colonialism. They make up evils because their lives are essentially empty inside. They need to find meaning. They find what you and I might find meaningful. I know this from music, which is my other field in life, because I conduct orchestras periodically. In the early 20th century, when people with no talent could not do anything Beethoven, Brahms, Schubert, Schumann, Haydn, Bach did, what they decided to do was to write music with no tonality, which you could write, and when I could write. That's easy to write. when there's no tonal and no harmonic and no melodic bass. It sounds. That's all it is. It's the same with overwhelmingly with contemporary art. You put a banana peel up on the wall in the Guggenheim Museum and call it art. By golly, I could do that too.
Mm. It's no accident that there is an article out now. It's out of San Mateo County, San Jose, California. First county in the country to recognize loneliness as a public health emergency. The board of supervisor there, the head of it, has actually written a letter to Governor Gavin Newsom requesting that he appoint a minister of loneliness in California.
They have one in England. The UK has a ministry of loneliness.
Yep, they've done it in England. And something similar is going on in Japan, where they're going to have a task force creating policies addressing loneliness and social isolation. I look at this and I understand. I see what they're talking about. It's not like I haven't read the stories. But I think you just tapped into what's at the heart of it. And I don't think the minister of loneliness is going to be saying anything about God or love of country.
That's right. That's right. The highest rate of depression in young American women and girls since data have begun being recorded. But every article on it in the mainstream press always says, well, what we need is more mental health professionals. No. What we need is more meaning. And meaning in American history, when people were much poorer, was derived from a book called the Bible, which is never offered as a possibility for rectifying this problem. Are religious people as depressed as secular people? No way. By the way, just out of curiosity, who is more likely to say men give birth? Secular people or religious people? The consequences of secularism are never delineated in the mainstream media or in our schools, but they're devastating.
There was another stat I read recently showing young girls are getting more and more liberal and young boys are getting more and more conservative. And I don't think that's completely unrelated to the spikes. It's not the entire explanation in anxiety and depression among young girls. These woke leftist teachers take advantage of their natural empathy, try to make them take on all of America's past sins as if they're present day and project them onto themselves, walking around feeling guilty and bad and calamitous about climate change, all of the left's favorite things. And I think girls in general are more tenderhearted at that age and let it all in. And they're exploited by these evil teachers who don't care about what they're doing to these kids psychologically as they remove God from the classroom, as they remove the flag from the classroom, except for the LGBTQ flag. And boys are just getting completely crushed for being boys, and they're in a revolt and looking for a team that still finds them acceptable people.
That's right. Well, there's one other thing with regard to the girls. Not only were God and religion removed from their lives, but so is marriage as a key component in their life. The feminist statement from when I was in college, a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. Even if it's not repeated word for word, that is exactly what young women are taught. Here's a beauty for you, Megyn. You'll love this. And I want you to try it next time you have a waitress or you're in line at the airport or sitting next to a young woman. So I have no compunctions about asking people anything. So let's say I'm with a woman who's obviously under 30. So I said, and we're in line going onto the plane, or she's my waitress. I've been asking this for about 25 years. Can I ask you a question? Of course, they say yes. Okay. So I'm going to offer you an option. I'm offering you two guarantees. And I want you to understand that if you choose one, but it doesn't mean the other cannot happen. It only means that it's not guaranteed. Which guarantee would you take? A guarantee of a great marriage or the guarantee of a great career? It's really interesting to ask young women this, and about high school, it's not even a question. Overwhelmingly, it'll be career. But even at 25 years of age. So anyway, just for the record, it's 50-50. What is also interesting, I can never predict it. The woman may have a whole bunch of tattoos and say great marriage. She may look quote unquote clean cut, and she says career. There's no predicting. Every parent should say to their daughter, and I've pushed this on my radio show for decades, you must not only push career, you must push marriage. My darling daughter, you will be happier with a good man in your life.
Yeah. Well, I talked to my daughter about it. We both do. And I always tell her, I'm like, Yards, get yourself a man who treats you the way dad treats me. Don't settle for less.
Perfect.
And then we hope we're modeling that, like we're very loving and supportive of each other. He takes care of me and I take care of him. I think she'll just see it and want it. I think my boys will see it and want it, because they grew up in it. I've said to them before, after being born in the United States of America, their greatest advantage in life is being born to a mother and a father who really deeply love each other. That's such
the
an
ultimate
advantage,
privilege.
right?
American
That's
privilege,
it.
not white privilege. American privilege and two-parent privilege.
Yeah. So I want to show you something that we found out of Planned Parenthood. They're going a different way. You won't be surprised to hear on their messaging to our young girls. The whole thing is worth Googling to the listening audience and watching, because you really can't quite believe this person, but it's long, so we cut it up a bit. Watch this.
Virginity is a completely made-up concept. It's a term that was created simply to control and shame people, mainly women. A virgin is someone who's never had sex, but it's not as simple as it seems. For one thing, medically, virginity isn't a real thing. Generally speaking, society tends to define sex in a very narrow way: penetration, penis into vagina. But where does that definition leave queer people? It's time to throw away the notion of losing your virginity. What if instead of losing something, we reframe it as gaining? But here's the one truth you should remember. Sex is defined by one thing and one thing only: you.
Okay. We cut out the most absurd parts of that, where she was talking about how not everybody has penis and vagina sex. And then she starts going through anal and oral and fingers. And I mean, this is like the little video for the 12-year-old girls about virginity.
Well, that would mean then that gay people are, by that definition, virgins throughout their lives. Remarkable.
There's like, she gets deep into the hymen and tampons. Like, oh my God, why does she feel the need to redefine virginity and try to make it, I don't know, I guess she wants to overrule Catholicism, where there's like some guilt about getting it on too young and before you're in love and technically before you're married. That seems to be a very anti-Christian message to me.
Well, how's this? I'm not a betting man. Gambling is not one of my instincts. So if I bet it, I'm sure I'll win. I would bet a serious amount of money that this is not a happy human being who made that video.
Wait, say that again? Say it again, Dennis. Say that. Repeat
I
that
would
one
bet
more.
a lot of money that this was not a happy woman, this woman who made that video. Hey,
You could be
she
right.
Did not read. Yeah, I mean, to think that.
And somebody who might still have her virginity.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. You're choking me up.
Just saying, why does she feel so strongly about getting rid of that term? Unclear.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. Now, let's shift and talk about some politics and some Middle East stuff, because I know this is a cause near and dear to your heart. And there's a couple things going on right now. It's official that the bill in the Senate, the $60 billion for Ukraine, the money for Israel, and the money for the border, it's dead, not happening. And right now, we're not sure exactly what that means. In the meantime, Israel tried once again to negotiate a ceasefire with Hamas, and Qatar was feeling really good about the chances. I guess when Qatar told Joe Biden about the deal, he didn't seem as optimistic. Here he is trying to say something about something on Tuesday.
There is some movement, and I don't want to let me choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
Oh my God. Okay. Just to finish off the news headlines there, if it didn't work, it's been rejected by Netanyahu. It was a terrible deal. Of course, they said in order to get your hostages back, you have to end the war immediately, full withdrawal of all the forces. We'll have a few 45-day truces where we get a bunch of our prisoners back and you get your hostages back, as though that's exactly the same thing. In any event, not happening. Your thoughts?
Well, first, I just want to comment on the president, and I make no mockery here or at all. There's nothing to mock. I mock the media. If this were a Republican president who was so obviously incapacitated, it would be headlines constantly. They would invoke the Constitution to remove the person from office because he's just not competent. And basically, almost nothing is said if you read or if you listen to NPR or read the New York Times or Washington Post. It's embarrassing before the world that we have. I don't think there's another national leader who is so obviously mentally incapacitated in so many ways. As regards this, look, the issue is enormous. What is very distressing is the incapacity of a serious percentage of Americans to perceive what is evil. I've spent my life studying good and evil because good is as big a riddle as evil. In fact, I think goodness is somewhat of a bigger riddle. I understand Nazis better than I understand the people who tried to hide a Jew during the Holocaust at the risk of their lives. Goodness is a puzzle. But I've studied good and evil all of my life, and the non-confrontation with evil. I've always said evil is always called dark, but the truth is it's very bright. People cannot stare at it. People were not prepared to call communism evil during the Cold War. You were called a Cold Warrior when Ronald Reagan said that the Soviet Union was an evil empire. He was excoriated by every major newspaper in the United States. Oh, how could we call them evil? We don't know. Who are we to say evil? What is evil? And now you have this. There is no more obvious good and evil as Israel and Hamas. If one does not understand that is a division between good and evil, then one's conscience is broken, is simply not working. And that's a very scary thing that is dominant. Now, what is it? 45% of young people don't side with Israel or something to that effect.
Yeah.
We have a broken moral compass in this country. That is what the left has done. The left has broken the conscience. That's the scariest thing that they have done, probably.
On the other end of that deal, as I point out, Ukraine's not going to get its funding, and there's not a lot of appetite in the United States to continue that, certainly not within the Republican Party. In the midst of that, Tucker Carlson flies to Russia and announces that he's interviewing Vladimir Putin, who my audience knows I've interviewed 3 times. And it was fascinating stuff. And I really enjoyed going to Russia, and I really enjoyed the Russian people. And Vladimir Putin is a very fascinating character, to say the least, but probably the most controversial in the world today, or at least one of them. So Tucker announces that he's doing it. And there we are. And there's a complete media meltdown about the fact that he's doing it. Now, he did say some controversial things already in promoting it, that no journalist had attempted to do it. Actually, here we have a bit of that at SOD 8. Watch.
Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. And they have done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States.
So a lot of journalists pointed out that they have requested multiple times to interview Vladimir Putin. It's not an easy get, that's for sure. But what's more interesting to me is the freak out on the left that he's even doing it. You know, I had this myself. I had this actually when I interviewed Putin the first time before he invaded Ukraine. I certainly had it when I interviewed Alex Jones, who's nowhere near as controversial as Vladimir Putin, but the meltdown was catastrophic over here. And we're seeing it again. Here's a little bit of that on Morning Joe responding before we've even seen the interview. Watch this.
Somebody that we know, that we used to know, going over, doing Vladimir Putin's bidding, attacking Western journalists, saying if only Western journalists would have come over here and tried to even report fairly on the war. Well, there have been Western journalists that have gone over and tried to report fairly on the war. And they're in jail. They're in gulags right now.
Yeah, he'll let a certain kind of journalist in for an interview, but not the ones who ask the questions. And I assure you, NBC and every other news organization in the Western world has a request in for an interview with Vladimir Putin. So it's not for a lack of trying.
Okay, so I will give them the point that journalists have tried. But if you just Google this, the left wing is very upset that he's platforming Putin. They're guaranteeing that he will ask no tough questions because his coverage of Putin hasn't been completely pro-Ukraine. What do you think?
Well, I would be very curious to know if Tucker Carlson or any other prominent person on the right went to interview, or for that matter, a prominent person on the left went to interview the head of Hamas in Qatar, where they live in their billion-dollar splendor. Would there be an outcry? I mean, if the issue is you don't interview evil, is it only applicable to Putin or is it applicable to Hamas? But on the left, Hamas is not evil. So it would be
very good point.
I would find it very interesting to know how they would react to that. I think Tucker Carlson, his stature, and he has a lot of stature, but I think that he's taking a risk, and it may be a very noble risk. I'm not using risk as a pejorative, but he has to ask some very difficult questions as well. He has to ask about the reporter that they just showed a full-page ad with regard to who was incarcerated on no good grounds. It would be worthy for him to ask about the opposition to Putin that all of a sudden seemed to disappear and die premature deaths. So if he excoriates those who interviewed Zelensky as pep sessions, that's his word, then he can't do the same thing with Putin. But otherwise, I think it is important that somebody does an interview with Putin. Personally, I have vigorously supported Ukraine in this matter. I have two other positions, however. I think that we should have pursued peace as vigorously when Boris Johnson went to squelch possible peace. That was a very bad thing. I was not happy about that. We need to try for peace there. I am worried about how much we have in weapons because the Democrats have so shattered defense budgets over the last decades. So there are very real issues at stake here.
Yeah, there's a lot of reason to be concerned about the pocketbook and where our money has gone in the funding of Ukraine and where it would continue to go if we continue to fund it. None of which has been fully answered.
Right.
I understand the consternation on both sides. Such a pleasure, my friend. Great to see you, Dennis Prager. You're the best.
Mutual.
Let's do it again. Okay, when we come back, Buck Sexton joins the program. Don't miss that. Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued the dog and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, and that inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, a home. It's dedication and everlasting love to animals. That's Leo's mission and legacy. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and if you would like caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax savings estate planning benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call a dog a man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. deltarescue.org. With cyber attacks on the rise, protecting your data security is more important than ever. So why is Congress considering a bill that could put your credit card data at greater risk of being hacked and exposed to foreign networks? Our advertiser, the Electronic Payments Coalition, says the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill shifts billions in consumer spending to less secure payment networks, all so that corporate megastores can make bigger profits. Find out more about the issue at electronicpaymentscoalition.org and decide for yourself if you would like to tell your senators to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. You often hear people say that when they listen to an old speech or debate clip of President Biden, it's startling. Age slows down most people, but remember, his staff and his closest allies want you to believe he's still the same old Joe, so quick on his feet and in his thoughts that even much of the younger staffers can't keep up with him. Sure, Jan. So we decided to go back and compile some old clips. Thought it might be interesting for you. Because even as of the 2020 election cycle, he sounded very, very different. First one is from 1993. Then Senator Biden was on the Senate floor giving one of his most impassioned speeches. He was about 49. Interestingly, the topic was about the Senate's tough-on-crime bill, eventually signed into law by President Clinton. Mr. Biden warned of, quote, predators on our streets, and worried openly about his family's safety.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this?
Obviously, the startling change there is not solely related to how robust Biden sounded. Fast forward 19 years to the 2012 election, when then Vice President Biden took part in a debate against Mitt Romney's running mate, Congressman Paul Ryan. He was quick on his feet in this exchange.
It has never been done before.
It's been done a couple of times, actually.
It has never been
Jack
done
Kennedy
before.
lowered tax rates, increased growth. Ronald Reagan.
Now you're Jack Kennedy.
Ronald Reagan.
With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey.
Despite Paul Ryan being nearly 30 years younger than Joe Biden, one headline the next day was, quote, Joe Biden's alpha male display leaves Paul Ryan overwhelmed. All right, that's a little much. 4 years later, a 72-year-old Vice President Biden went to bat for Hillary Clinton in her race against Donald Trump. He ended one speech with a rousing call to action.
In America, we never bow. We never bend. We endure. We move forward. We are America, and we are second to none. That is the history of the journey of this country. And God willing, Hillary Clinton will write the next chapter of that history. So go vote. Go vote.
8 years ago. Then came 2020. During the Democratic primary race, Julian Castro and Senator Cory Booker gingerly questioned Mr. Biden's mental acuity, but both went on to endorse him. On the debate stage with then President Donald Trump, Mr. Biden had some notable sparring moments.
Your party wants to go socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now.
By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've
He
never
would
seen
know a
before.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
He made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made a
son,
fortune.
my son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to
Hey,
make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be surprised.
You pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy,
Go,
the wrong
go,
night
Joe,
at the
go.
wrong time.
There are many reasons why, if both men are their party's respective nominees, we will not see a debate like that later this year. But one of the reasons is certainly Mr. Biden's facility with words and ideas. The very first year he became president, it was obvious he was in rapid decline. During a press conference in June 2021, he whispered over and over during his remarks.
I got them $1.9 trillion relief so far. They're going to be getting checks in the mail that are consequential. I wrote the bill on the environment. Pay them more. This is an employees bargaining chip now. What's happening?
Wow. In 2022, he called out during a speech for a congresswoman who had died a month earlier in a car crash and seemed to almost malfunction at other times.
Representative Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here. Much more informed on the motives of some of the political players and some of the political parties. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies.
Fast forward to present day. In the past few weeks, the president has at times been completely incoherent during not one, but several speeches.
The beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why he's trying to... Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit. Asylum officers and over 100 cutting-edge inspection machines to help detect and stop fentanyl coming on our southwest border.
It's sad. It feels wrong. We butted some of these sound bites together so you can hear the decline over the years in quick succession, which we think brings it home. Take a listen.
The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons.
Jack Kennedy lowered tax rates, increased growth. Ronald Reagan.
Now you're Jack Kennedy.
In America, we never bow. We never bend. We endure. We move forward. We are America, and we are second to none.
Your party wants to go socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now.
Much more informed on the motives of some of the political players and some of the The beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why he's trying to... Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
Joining me now, Buck Sexton, co-host of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Buck, welcome back. Great to have you. I take no joy in offering that up. I don't think it's funny. I'm alarmed. I'm sad for him. If I were married to him, I would say, honey, it's time we exit stage left. How on earth is he going to make it not just another 9 months, Buck, but another 5 years in this office?
Well, Megyn, my sense of this, and thank you for having me, is that Biden is effectively a figurehead, that when people are voting, I think he will make it through to the election. And if he doesn't, Kamala Harris will take over for him. I know there are a lot of theories out there about how there's some Democrat plan, but I think the logistics of that are far more complicated than some of the third options that people are discussing, meaning not Joe, not Kamala, something else. It's much more difficult than I think it initially sounds to a lot of folks, or than they initially think it would be, to just replace Joe Biden. He's an incumbent president. He's decrepit and falling apart, yes. And I share your sense on that too. I remember I was very close with my maternal grandfather, and I remember in his final years what it was like to go see him. And Joe Biden actually reminds me of that. But we didn't expect him to be commander in chief at the time. We had very different understanding of what was going on with him. And the people that are in a position to do something about Joe Biden, most notably his wife, I think they view this as his last act of service. I think if you start to look at this from the other side of the chessboard and the power apparatus of the Democrats, as long as Joe Biden can stay in, he will stay in. And the whole point here is to get beyond the election. They think that he's the best option to defeat Donald Trump. And then it's very likely Kamala Harris will take over. And I think take over very early, assuming Biden wins, take over very early in another administration, or in the beginning of the administration, I should say, and start her own 8-year trend. At least that's the plan, right? She probably wouldn't win after 4. This is very obvious, though. We've seen this. We're at a point now, Megyn, where it's almost, it's too clear. And so people become numb to it. And there's no argument against it. Even Democrats recognize it, but they don't think of it as I'm voting for a CEO. They think of it as I'm voting for Coke or Pepsi. And that's it. It's just the brand and the machinery.
Dean Phillips, who's a Democrat trying to challenge Joe Biden, but he's getting the boot on the forehead. The Democrats won't have it. He tweeted out a couple of these videos the other day and wrote as follows: I'm attacked for being honest and saying the quiet part out loud, the part DC insiders only do in private. I admire our president. I voted for him and campaigned for him. He's visited my home and been gracious to me and my family and our country. But shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You are leading us and him into a disaster, and you damn well know it. Gosh, it's true. It's right. It's not so simple, right? As he's going to win and then he's going to step down or die, and Kamala Harris. No one wants her. No one is electing her to be the president. That should be made right now. That switch, if that's what we're really voting for, should be made right now. They talk about how we have to have the Trump trials right now because people need to know what they're voting for. They need to know if he's a convicted felon or not before November. Shouldn't we know who's actually going to be president for the next 4 years, him or her, before we go to the ballot box in November?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But that would assume that there's some degree of honesty that the Democrat Party revolves around, which I just don't think is true. I think we could go into a great detail about how they are really a party now that is rooted in pretending, especially at election time, they pretend to be something other than that which they are, right? The way that Democrats win national elections is to generally have Democrats act more like centrists or Republicans close enough to the election that they can fool people. The perfect example of this was Joe Biden in 2020 as a uniter and a guy who would calm things down. Now he's got multiple DOJ federal indictments of his leading political opponent after 4 years of the most divisive presidency. I actually think Joe Biden's more divisive than Obama. I'll say that. I think that the stance that he took on forced vaccination of people over COVID was, as one single act, I think more divisive than anything actually Obama did. And I didn't think Obama was a uniter either. So the whole thing was a lie. And I think they're very concerned about that this time around. They're obviously just going to try to throw everything they can at Donald Trump. But the dishonesty of the campaign by no means, in my mind, discounts that this is what they're likely to do. And I think that with Kamala Harris, you see somebody who the system likes her. I use the term the apparatus for this kind of stuff. You could say that too. But the Democrat machinery elevated her to be Joe Biden's vice president in the first place. Democrat voters didn't want her, and yet they made her VP. It's
no one's ever wanted
her. Who?
No one.
No, yeah. I thought you were telling me someone wanted her. I'm like, who wanted her? No one wanted her.
No. This is. What was it? Willie Brown out in California? Like he wanted her. That's it.
I mean, it's something that you could see. Actually, she was very popular. I mean this. She was very popular in the CNN green room. There are Democrat news anchors that I think like the virtue signaling points they get from talking about how great Kamala Harris is. But that was before we saw the degree of, I'm not just talking about incompetence. Like no one thinks that she's a particularly bright or astute person. Let's just honestly. But the idea was, well, she can play the role and she can make people like her and she can be somewhat chameleon-like in her politics. And that's all been a total sham as well. They couldn't even give her fake make-believe jobs and roles like border czar without creating massive political liability for themselves. Hence, you don't even hear about, think about this. Look where we are with the border. Can you imagine if Kamala was still being called the border czar? I mean, it would be nothing but further disaster to her already plummeting brand. But that's why I think for them, it has to be Biden. And that's why I've said this all along. And I know this, Megyn, I know this is deeply cynical. Okay. I have a bet with Clay, my co-host and my friend, that it's going to be Joe Biden no matter what for the Democrats. And I've even said they will wheel him out with a blanket across his knees and a sippy cup on stage if they have to, because people are voting for the name, for the brand, for the system around him, not for the guy. Joe Biden's been an imbecile his whole life.
Does Clay think it's going to be Michelle Obama? Who does he think?
Yes, he thinks it's going to be Michelle Obama.
Okay, all right. I haven't made up my mind. I'm not ruling out the Michelle Obama option the way you are, but if I had to put money down, I'd put it on Biden. Here we have a big bet on it, Megyn. The View, the ladies of the View. I got to tell you, Buck Sexton, for once in your life, you're in agreement with Sonny Hostin. Okay, watch.
You guys ask me all the time, well, you can't support Trump. I will not support Trump, but why aren't you just backing Biden? I'm worried Biden's going to lose to Trump. In 2020, when he beat Donald Trump, a potato could have beat Donald Trump. We were in a global pandemic. The economy was in free fall.
But you know what? A potato could not have beat him. One thing that Joe Biden knows is he knows how to run the government. He knows this. Yeah. And there was nobody else in the pike. And to come out and say, get another candidate, when?
There isn't going to be another candidate. No.
Yeah.
The candidate is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
He has run this country well. He has so much to run on. He's got better economy. Inflation is down. Job growth. He has a platform to run on. The Republicans have zero to run on. And the best candidate that the Republicans could come up with is Donald Trump.
Okay, so I think we've kind of covered the ground in there, but I will say this. Never underestimate the ability of the Republicans to screw it up, right? Like, I don't know. Like, they're the ones who said, we're not giving you Ukraine and Israel aid unless we get, concessions on the border. And then they got him. And I don't think anybody supports this border deal that's taken a hard look at it. But they were like, bye, and we're taking our ball and going home. That's how it's going to play in the media. They're already getting ripped on blowing it up and giving this to Joe Biden as an issue. Secondly, they go ahead, try to impeach Mayorkas, DHS secretary. They fall short. They didn't manage it. They couldn't. It's just every day the RNC chair is out, kind of leaving head down in disgrace. The RNC only has $8 million left. It's just every day, Buck. I realize they like Trump, but like the Republican Party, they're not totally wrong on The View when they're like, what are they offering? Because they look like a mess over there.
Well, part of it is they haven't been winning. And, we have to look at that with clear eyes, and we have to be honest about it. I mean, you have to have the political power to enact the programs and the margins, as we know, too, especially you're talking about the House and the Senate. So they've got this razor thin majority and the smallest majority in the history, I believe, of the Congress, right? I mean, it's as small as it could possibly get. And then you have a very close to, evenly split Senate. And so there's not going to be some sweeping Republican policy change. To your point, I think that there should be a far more clear, comprehensive agenda that the Republicans are announcing. And on the straightforward things like the Mayorkas impeachment effort, I actually spoke to the Speaker of the House earlier this week about it after it had failed. And he says, look, we're going to do it next week. He says that there was somebody who wasn't supposed to be there for the Democrats, but was in a hospital gown and slippers. And okay, whatever, fine. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that there's a vision for the country that allows them to win in the fall election, right? I mean, in November is what's going to determine the policies of the country, not whether or not Republicans can make some stand or do something that is for the optics, but I don't think really changes anything. And just back to the Biden thing for a second. Look, I think it's rather straightforward. The polls look awful for Joe, and Democrats look like they are just walking toward annihilation in this election, at least at the presidential level. But there are still those polls that show, the same polls that show that Trump would crush Biden tomorrow. And I believe that's true. If the election were held tomorrow, if he gets convicted in this DC trial, I just had a caller call in today, Megyn, to our radio show. And I was a little surprised. He said, I voted for Trump twice. I'm excited to vote for him again. But if he's a convicted felon, I don't know if I can do it. I said, wait, hold on this stuff? You really feel that way? I was legitimately quite shocked. But the polling shows that if they can squeeze out a guilty verdict, Trump loses. He loses in all of the swing states. He loses bigly in the November election. So that's a way they change all this around. And old man Biden doesn't really matter anymore. And that's just the trick that they may pull that we already know is coming, right? There can be other stuff as well. So I just never like to underestimate the deviousness of the Democrat Party.
Good, fair. This is why you've got Trump now. Trump, Mr. I'm not going into any of the primary debates. And I know why he didn't. I get it. But the risk in not going to any of the primary debates was that it would be then used against him by Joe Biden, who we all know is not going to want to debate him in the general. So that's why Trump now, even before he's officially secured the nomination, he knows there's not going to be any debates coming up. It has changed his tune and is now saying the following to our pal Dan Bongino in SOT 30.
I don't think he's going to run. I don't know if it's donors or otherwise. It might be his family. It might be something. I don't think he's going to run. But I'd like to call for immediately debates. I'd like to debate him now because we should debate. We should debate for the good of the country. So I will officially on your show call. I will.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
I also said,
we're breaking news, Mr. President. Donald J. Trump calls for debates against Joe Biden. That's great.
So we can
breaking
talk
some
about
news
these
here.
problems, Dan, and get him to change his ways. But I am officially doing that. I also put out, you probably noticed, that I'll take his spot at the Super Bowl if they want. We'll get very good ratings.
Because Biden won't do the Super Bowl halftime interview. By the way, here's Joe Biden responding to the challenge. Watch.
He's ready to debate you right now. Do you accept?
He just said that on radio. What they said to immediately. He says.
Immediately?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Will you debate him?
If I were him, I'd want to debate me too. You got nothing else to do.
I'd want to debate me too. He's got nothing. By the note to self, like to the campaign staffers, if you want to make him look like a competent executive who's fully there, stop picturing him walking out of the ice cream store with his chocolate chip and his little, juice with his straw. Like, what's next? He's like, walking out of the orthopod sneaker store. That's not a good look.
Look, Biden's been doing this, though. His entire career is really built on lowest common denominator, shake the hands, put on the big grin, and pretend that you're one of the folks. He's one of those people. He's always talking about, I'm the folks. I have to say, back to the debate.
That absolute hellwater of a town.
Yeah, he's riding the choo-choo into work. Good old blue-collar Joe. It's like, this is a guy who's been begging CEOs for rides on their private jets for as long as he's been in the Senate, by the way. I mean, he's just one of the, people use the term grifter far too much these days. Biden and the Bidens are actually grifters. This is one thing that, I think the term has lost a little of its punch because it's now something that people say about other people in the same industry that are more successful than them, right? It's become a little bit of a term of envy. But Biden is a grifter. And I would just say, on the Trump call for debates, look, I mean, I voted for Trump twice. I'm looking forward to voting for him again. I think he can win. So I'm a Trump fan. I'm a Dan Bongino fan. Dan's a great guy. But I was worried about this the whole time. I was always saying, if he doesn't debate against Ron DeSantis and the rest, this is going to be turned around. And while people on the right, the Trump voters, they're okay with that inconsistency, no one else is going to see it as something that needs to change now, right? So I think that Joe Biden is unlikely to see any change in his numbers based on his unwillingness to debate. However, his numbers are so bad that he actually may be pressured, right? So I think that he has a sort of get out of jail free card if he wants it on the debate issue. But I think that as we get closer here, if the numbers don't turn, he's going to have to show up, and they're going to give him whatever they give him to make him seem alert and awake.
Yeah.
And
it's like the thing they give the horses. Whatever they give those horses, that's illegal right before the big race. And it works. Here's the other thing, though. I mean, we're kind of talking about style and whether they can fight and the verbal jousting. But, that NBC News poll that just came out the other day, which is showing Trump up on Biden, I think it's +5, and beating him on the economy by 22 points, beating him on crime by 20, beating him on immigration by 35 points. The deal, for better or for worse, has collapsed, this border deal. And Biden's not going to start putting Trump policies in place, which he could. Can't do it all, but he can do some of Trump's policies for sure. Same as Trump did. He's not going to. And we're going to get 9 months, yes, of Trump on trial, but also of this. Look at this ad that the Trump team just dropped on the border policies. I've seen a lot of ads. This one's pretty damn good. Watch it.
6 men have been charging that brutal attack caught on camera.
A shocking act of violence.
2 NYPD officers beaten in Times Square.
All of those arrested were released without bail.
Why did these 4 individuals be released on their own recognizance?
The Biden administration is fighting to release as many migrants as quickly as possible.
I'll reverse Trump's detrimental asylum policies. There's no need for us.
Biden administration reversed Trump's policy on remain in Mexico.
Joe Biden to stop construction of the border wall.
It's a new day on the southern border. Here we go. The policy that made it easy to kick out migrants is gone.
He inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration, and he immediately reinstated catch and release. And so when they apprehend people, they let them go.
I'll reverse Trump's detrimental asylum policies.
Ends with Joe Biden is giving you the finger as that illegal immigrant released with no bail gives the double bird to the cameras. Pretty good, Buck.
They've got a huge problem. The country is solidly against the Biden border policies. The numbers, you can look at different versions of it, but 65% pretty easily, maybe more like even 70%, especially if people are asked the question in a way that reminds them that this was all by design. This is not something that happened that was unforeseeable. Biden decided to break the dam and see what happens. And we've now had this flood of illegal immigrants. I mean, I've been following this story for years now. I've been down to the border many times, different places along to see what really is going on for Border Patrol, how the cartels operate. And when you see it, Megyn, you realize that it is an open border. When you have people showing up by the hundreds, waving Border Patrol down and basically telling them, bring me my drinks and my sandwiches, process me and get me my bus ticket or my plane ticket to New York, because they know that's what's going to happen. That's an open border. And I've seen that with my own eyes, and it's constantly going on. This was all because the far left of the party, which remember, Biden was the Trojan horse, right? He was supposed to be the unifier and the sort of normal Democrat who's, old fashioned values and all. It's all crap. It's all a lie. The far left of the Democrat Party is open borders. We know they want amnesty. We know they want to change the electorate and the demographics of America. It's obvious to everybody. And it's particularly obvious because whenever we talk about it, they get really angry about it, even though we can all see what's going on. And I just say there's no way for them to stop this. I'm glad Republicans didn't all step into the bear trap here and become complicit in this mess with this disaster of a border bill. Certainly House Republicans saw this for what it was. Some of the GOP senators They're horrible on immigration because their donors want them to be horrible on immigration. Everyone just needs to understand that.
Tick off your top least favorite things about the bill, Buck.
Oh my gosh. The fact that, first of all, that it starts at 5,000 a day, as though that is an acceptable number, right? So there's this triggering mechanism for, if it's 5,000 a day, I think it's for more than 7 days, or more than 8,000 a day for a 1 day period or something. The answer to all of this is to stop the people from abusing our asylum system. The real problem here has to do with asylum. All this stuff about funding and more border agents and all the rest, they are processing the illegals who come into the country. There's also in the bill, Megyn, there's discretion for the president, in this case, Joe Biden, to effectively override all the emergency provisions, to say it's not an emergency anymore. So This was always going to fall apart. All you have to do, for anyone out there, is go back and look at the mechanisms of the Reagan 1986 amnesty. For Reagan fans out there, this was not a good moment, and Reagan admitted it. What you always end up getting is all these promises that there'll be stricter enforcement. The only thing that really happens, though, is the more expedited entry for many of these classes of illegals, and then the permanent state of amnesty that those who are already in the country get. And that was clearly going to happen with the bill itself. So the fact that it doesn't address in a way that I think is robust enough to get around DHS discretion on the issue, and discretion just means nullification of the law in this instance, that the credible fear standard for the entries into the country, that effectively you need to remain in Mexico because you need to remove the magnet to get into the country and be able to stay here pending your hearing. I know this stuff kind of gets into the weeds a little bit, but that was removed by Biden. That's not restored here. So that's a huge, some of what's wrong with the bill is what's also not in it. The fact is, right now, as a function of law, Megyn, if anyone crosses a third country, in this case Mexico, on their way into the United States, they're not eligible for asylum. Right. That's you're supposed, unless they've tried to get asylum in Mexico and were denied. So all of these people should be ineligible.
Yes. And Mexico does nothing to stop the route. And they get here, we say, come right in. We don't care. We pretend that we believe the fake asylum claims, and we know it's a lie.
The biggest business in Mexico was drug dealing, and I think it's probably now close to being the human smuggling across the border, if it hasn't already happened.
All right, stand by. Quick break. Buck stays with us, and we'll be right back with him. Discover a holistic wellness solution with Bon Charge, a brand dedicated to optimizing every aspect of your life. Grounded in science and inspired by nature, their evidence-based products cover a broad spectrum of premium wellness items. From enhancing sleep and performance to boosting energy, accelerating recovery, and balancing hormones, Bon Charge offers a diverse range of benefits. Consider the infrared sauna blanket from Bon Charge that they say can burn extra calories and detoxify. This innovative blanket elevates your heart rate, simulating the effects of physical exercise. Bon Charge says sweating during the process helps eliminate heavy metals and toxins from your body, and that setting it up takes less than a minute. It rapidly heats up for a quick and convenient experience. For a limited time, save 15% by visiting boncharge.com/MK. Use the coupon code MK. That's BONCHARGE.com/MK and use coupon code MK to save yourself 15%. Buck, let's do a little media news. It's not going well over at CNN. You're shocked. I know.
I'm dripping with schadenfreude over here, but yeah.
The cursed morning show over there, which is just failure after failure, has failed again. And now the CNN This Morning Show with Poppy Harlow and Phil Mattingly is going away. Now CNN is in talks with those anchors about new roles. It's not happening. If you don't get an anchor job right out of being fired from your anchor job, you no longer have an anchor job. Then they're doing CNN News Central, which is going to go to from 7 to 10 a.m. with John Berman, Kate Bouldon, and Sarah Sidner. Now, John Berman was already in the morning position, and it didn't work out. Like, this is what it's just the rearranging of the deck chairs. That's their only plan, except for this one thing, which is guess who's getting his own show on the weekdays now, no longer marooned on the weekends? Jim Acosta, baby. He's moving to the 10 a.m. And being rewarded. I mean, really, that's a reward for his rabid anti-Trump coverage and getting Russiagate completely wrong, all of it. So this is how Rachel Maddow gets a $30 million a year for one show a week. You just keep lying about Trump and you keep moving up the ladder.
Yeah, look, I was at CNN in 2014 and 2015 into 2016 this is when they used to actually have conservatives on the payroll. I was there. Yeah. Kayleigh McEnany was there. I mean, there were a few of us. And in the Trump era, to give everyone a sense, that just became unacceptable. I mean, it was no longer, they're a network that got so ideologically crazed that they were having to have people on that were fakes for the other side, meaning people that actually can't represent the Republican pro-Trump point of view. Instead, it was only Republicans who hate Trump. And then it just started being no Republicans at all.
That's
so
true.
The notion of CNN as a news channel has been laughable for a long time. It's obviously left of center. It's Democrat aligned. It's effectively DNC TV, mostly watched in airports. But in terms of why their ratings are so far down, they've put their audience through quite a bit of whiplash, right? They seem like they were going to be a little more open to broader ideological points of view under the last guy, right, who just got fired. It got fired because he had a Trump town hall. Trump, as we all know, is the Republican nominee, or officially soon to be the Republican nominee. And that's the kind of thing that if you're a news network, you actually have to cover it. It's news. It's the same thing with Trump rallies. If you're going to call yourself a news network and look at American politics. But I don't mean to be unkind about this, although I will say some of the people at CNN were quite unkind when they thought they could get away with it during the Trump era because the channel was doing well. I won't name names. They just don't have very interesting people on television over there. I mean, I could sit here and say, I can pick people from the other side who are good TV, even if I really disagree with them. And very few of them work at CNN. Very few of them are interesting and have unique takes and have a real presence. So it's not surprising at all. I think CNN is getting what it deserves. And it's just making everybody think more about who's honest with you about what they're trying to do and who's still playing games about being nonpartisan and just objective news. It's not CNN.
You know what's terrible? They never had great ratings. That's the truth, except on the big news days, like when there's breaking news and, the tsunami and earthquake over in Phuket, Thailand. That huge. Everybody tunes into CNN because they will cover the field. They'll have the best resources. They're overstaffed. So those are good nights for CNN. Other than that, they've never had any ratings. But they used to have respect. Nobody ever got a sizzle or a little tingle when they watched CNN, but it used to be fair. And then they completely abandoned that under Jeff Zucker. And now they've ruined their reputation and they have shitty ratings still. So it's the worst combination. I'll tell you a story. Somebody here, I don't know who it is, but in the new role is she's out on maternity leave. I'm not sure who it is, but I guess until she comes back, they're going to have Wolf Blitzer sit in for her. And can I tell you something? It reminds me very much. Oh, it's Pamela Brown. She's going to be at 11 a.m., but she's on maternity leave. So Wolf Blitzer is going to anchor. When I was at Fox, I was in Roger Ailes' office. Jeff Zucker had just taken over as the new head of CNN, and he was calling Roger to say, thank you for saying those nice things about me in the press. I love the story. And Roger said, well, I didn't say them because they're true. I said them because they make myself look good. They make me look good. And Zucker laughed, and he said, well, do you have any advice for me? And Roger said, well, I could certainly use another hour of Wolf Blitzer. And lo and behold, they're still doing this. They don't understand that was sarcasm. We do not need another hour of Wolf Blitzer. He's not the answer to your problems or anything in the morning where they've literally got 1/3 the audience of Morning Joe and Fox and Friends.
So Trump won the election, and I knew because I had seen it coming for a long time at CNN. And believe it or not, because I used to do I used to do it on your show at Fox, Megyn. I appreciate that very much. And then at CNN, I mean, I knew all the counterterrorism stuff backwards and forwards because I'd worked at CIA, CTC, and I'd run presidential briefings, and I'd been in Iraq, and I'd been in Afghanistan, and it was a couple of years before I was on TV. It wasn't 20 years ago, which is a whole other thing about how cable news works. Some of these guys that retired from the Air Force in 1994, I wouldn't go to them necessarily to have their latest strategy on how to deal with what's going on in Syria. Neither here nor there, but that was a common thing in cable news, going back now about a decade. But I had no job for television in 2016. CNN offered to extend my contract, which was a shock to me, because I could do the terrorism stuff, though, and not politics. And I said no. And I will remember I didn't think Jeff Zucker knew who I was. And I'm sure now he would say that he doesn't know who I am, which is fine. I don't care. But I remember I walked in the lobby over there after I had said no to the contract. I just don't want to work for you guys anymore. I won't take any more of your money, which is, in TV, especially as you're starting out, I was, earlier even in my career than I am now. That's kind of a bold move. Zucker saw me in the lobby. I was going there to visit a friend because I had made a lot of friends in the staff. He looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing here?"
Oh, wow.
Just like
that. Nice.
And I was like, I don't know. I'm going to see a friend. Like, is that okay? I'm like banned from the building because I don't want to accept your very meager paycheck to be a punching bag and try to explain to your audience that they're a bunch of anti-Trump lunatics. I mean, I just try to keep it real. So anyway, that's my Jeff Zucker story.
It did not end well for him either there. I mean, it's just, look, they never should have done the turn they did. They could have done slow and steady through the Trump years, tried to maintain objectivity. They didn't. Okay, in other bad media news, Jon Stewart is coming back to The Daily Show. He's, he Khaleesi off into the fire. He was like, "I'm out of here. I rocked The Daily Show. No one can do better than I did. Bye." And it imploded. It did terribly. And he was enjoying his sheep farm in, upstate New York, pretending like he just was over the glare of the spotlight. Like he just didn't want it. And then boom, he's back with an Apple show. Oh, what happened? I thought you didn't want okay, but I guess you did. It bombed. The ratings for that show were through the toilet. It made that CNN morning show look like it was Tucker Carlson in primetime Fox News days. So, of course, because he's a leftist, they rewarded his failure with another season on Apple. Mm-hmm. And now he's agreeing to come back, but he's pulling the Rachel Maddow. One night on The Daily Show. I'm sure he's getting buku bucks for it. And we're going to have to listen to that nonsense once again. And the question is whether he will be able at this point in his career to totally indoctrinate another group of growing leftists the way he did 14 years ago, or whether he's jumped the shark, as they say.
Oh, no, it's not going to be what it was. And that's because he had, I think, and I want to give proper credit here, Kevin Williamson, is a National Review, very, very talented writer.
He was.
I think he's referred to it as clown nose on, clown nose off. And that is the best description, I think, of Jon Stewart that I've ever read, because, sometimes he was Mr. Serious Policy Guy, wanted to talk about the Iraq War with Rumsfeld. But the moment you start to push back, or the moment you explain that he's actually wildly ignorant and doesn't have much context for his statements, it's, hey, I'm just making jokes about, whatever. And the show before this is puppets making crank phone calls. And, he played this game. And really what he just did was elevate a mentality among a whole generation of Democrats that the other side was just to be, you were to attribute false beliefs to the other side, or make a false argument for the other side, the classic straw man situation, and then just sneer at them, then just be as nasty about it as you can. It was never jokes that were meant to make everyone laugh. It was jokes that were meant to make liberals, leftists laugh at people who didn't agree with them. And I just think that what Jon Stewart did was, and I'll be honest, I used to watch it when I was in college too. So, I was somebody who, I was aware of the politics of it. Sometimes I thought it was funny. And my roommates all wanted to watch it. Now we're getting, going back 20 some odd years now. But I remember my roommates loved Jon Stewart. But the whole thing, Megyn, was deeply dishonest. It was dishonest because the whole thing was, we can interview somebody and edit it however we want because we're just making jokes. No, they were ridiculing people.
Well, what would be
sometimes they're ridiculing a guy that, or a gal that doesn't really matter, but they would do it to people, particularly who were on the right. And then that became the sport. And it was always propaganda. It was always funhouse mirror versions of the other side.
So it will be again, but what's different this time?
Because people now know, I think there's a greater degree of sophistication and understanding, first of all, about Jon Stewart's politics. He's a huge lib. That's anyone who doesn't know
he's
that.
He's a leftist.
I know you probably would think, well, didn't they know that then? No, he was a comedian. He was a comedian. He became a sanctimonious, whiny old man when he left the Daily Show and the Apple show. He became one of these guys who has no insights to offer whatsoever, but just sits there and sneers at people. It's like, oh, I'm above politics. Why can't people just listen to me? No, actually, you're a jackass. And a lot of what he did, I think, poorly served his audience. I think it's why there's so many emotionally unstable Democrats in their 30s and 40s walking around who can't handle another argument. And I really think that overall, Jon Stewart was a very lucky guy in the right place at the right time to do very bad things for political discourse in this country by pretending to be above it when really he was just the most corrupt version of it.
It's going to be fun. I look forward to it because, over on Fox, they didn't want you to spend too much time on him. And now if he pulls his bullshit, it's on. Like the conservative ecosphere has just gotten too big and powerful for him to get away with that bullshit. There's just too many people who will put the lie to his nonsense claims, and he'll never have the power that he once had. He'll try, he won't.
There are too many,
Megyn.
That's really the other thing, and I just wanted to say this. I mean, I think people know more about who he is, but more importantly, if he tries to clip you up or something or somebody else and go, you have a bigger fire hose than he does now. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a changed world that we're operating in. And that was one of the things that always really, really pissed me off about a place like CNN. They were so dishonest about the time you'd get on air. I mean, can I tell you one more quick CNN story?
Yeah.
You might like this one.
Yeah, please.
So I was the one who would go on air and say over there, this is obviously like jihadist terrorism, Islamic extremist terrorism. And they would always play this game of, no, how do you know that? And I'd say, well, I did this for a living and had a TS clearance and just looked at terrorism cases all day and work anyway. And Brian Stelter decided that he was going to go at me sometime. So we sat there and I went through it all. And sure enough, I was right. And he got smoked and the whole thing. And they pre-taped it. The guy could barely read off of a prompter, never mind handle himself in a debate. They never even told, they just pulled it from his show a couple of days later. Never even told me. Never even gave it. So I tweeted, hey guys, I'm going to be on Brian's show, but he got smoked. So they just pretended like it never happened and knew that if they told me, I'd be like, what? So the whole interview, 8 minutes of Brian Stelter, like, I don't understand. Why are you smarter than me? Annihilated. And they just made it go into the trash bin because that's how dishonest a place it is. It's I almost cursed on your show. That's how fired up. I never cursed.
I mean, you know how I am. So you're good.
I was so close.
Yeah. That's amazing. How cowardly. I've had many, many embarrassing moments on the air, including in pre-tape shows. And I leave them in. I mean, it's like, it's cheating to take them out, warts and all. Only ones I'll take out is I've said something factually wrong that I don't want to put out there, or that's it. I mean, I can't think of another one that I would ever take out. That's embarrassing. How embarrassing for him. All right, let's end on this. Back and forth within the Republican Party on Bud Light. You saw I'm sorry. I'm kind of pissed off. I'm not going to lie. Donald Trump is out there. Let's give him a second chance. It's a great American company. They're hosting a huge fundraiser for him. That's why he's doing this. It's like they're buying off person after person and expecting all the Republicans to take the knee. I am firmly in the Matt Walsh camp of this is the best and biggest victory that conservatives have had in the culture wars in decades. It's the only massive company that has been forced to listen to our objections, and it's worked, except they haven't apologized. And I am not going to bend the knee at all until I want that CEO here or another show or someplace out there telling me he gets how offensive what he did was and why. Otherwise, I'll know he's still in the capture of the trans activist lobby. That's where I stand. What do you think?
I wish I had a fiery rebuttal for you, but I'm apparently standing beside you and Matt Walsh, two people I tend to agree with on a lot of things. So, yeah, I think that, look, Trump's trying to win an election and he's going to play the game the way he has to play it to win. And that means dealing with the donors and everything else. And part of, I think, the Trump supporters' view of that freedom, which can sometimes lead to some inconsistencies with how he approaches things, is whatever he's got to do to get it done. Like if he's got to, buy off the refs or he's got to do something when the ref's not looking, that's what he's got to do to win. I think that Bud Light is obviously still afraid of the trans lobby. Otherwise, they could have handled this I would have said it's all fine and forgiven if they had immediately come out and said, guys, that will never happen again. We made a mistake.
Yeah.
The reason they won't do it is because they're afraid of, it's not just the trans lobby, really. It's, the DEI corporate apparatus. And also their buddies on the golf course. I mean, the C-suite, these guys are already rich. They're already very influential. They could almost all retire. You look at the CEO of Bud Light. He's like my age, by the way. Anyway, a whole other thing. But these people have plenty of money. They could walk away from it. They want the approbation of their peer group, and they want to be invited to polite society. And they're afraid that they'll be attacked by the left in a way that will prevent that. So I agree with you. We shouldn't allow people to get bought off on this one. I understand why Trump's doing what he's doing, but I don't have to go along with it. It turns out you can like Trump and vote for him and not agree with everything he says. I know the Democrats don't believe that's a thing, but it's definitely a thing.
Well said. Yes, totally in lockstep with you on that. And Matt Walsh, who's always got crystal clear clarity on this particular subject. Buck Sexton, what a pleasure. I love talking to you. Thanks for coming on.
Always so fun to hang. Next time I'm going to curse, Megyn. Next time it's going to happen.
Do it. I'm going to see the naughty
It'll
side.
Feel so
Buck.
freeing.
Come on in. The water's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
then we'll both get upset messages from my mom. Okay. Talk soon. And don't forget, everybody, tune in tomorrow here on the show, because guess who's going to be here? Jeffrey Epstein's brother. That ought to be fun. Don't miss that one.